the. Good. Does the public have anything to comment on? Izzy? No. Okay. All right. We'll get to the big one then, emergency services ambulance. Got more to leave?
You want me to start, Mr. Breyer? We lose him?
No.
Scott, you there?
Says he's there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I just was gonna say, I'll start if you want.
Okay, sure.
All right, so we're back today to make a final decision on contracts for ambulance services for the town. I think it's important to just take a step back and talk about why we're here at all. Essentially, the discussion started for us to look at timing, responsive time, right? We've all talked about that, and we do have a split town for our fire department. The basic questions were, you know, why aren't we doing the same thing with the ambulance services? And then that prompted us to look even a little bit further and say, you know, is the split meaningful? Was it correct? Was, you know, for the time of this response? So that's how we got here. That's how the generated the discussion. And it's evolved to this point. We have Orleans ambulance on one side of our town of the bay, a couple miles away, fortunately for us, and equally as fortunate is that we have Newport on the opposite side, within a couple of miles. So we're probably the luckiest town in that we have great service on both sides. So with that said, the last time we met with here in our meeting and we had some discussions with you guys, at least I left here a little bit confused. Some of the things didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I've spent the last 2 or 3 days thinking through it for myself. Talked with Matt a little bit. I went back and I talked with Marilyn a little bit to clarify some of my thinking on that end, and you guys. So if I can, I'd like to just go right through this, these issues. One of them, maybe potentially the most important one, is how each of the services actually calculated the cost. So it's per capita, and your per capita cost for Coventry was $38
for the whole town. $38.14. Yes.
It changes.
We changed. Are you talking in the past or current?
The number you've given us.
Okay, no, we didn't do that. We did it by,
Yeah, so we did it by per cap. So it's $38.14 for the whole town.
Right.
But we had if we were splitting it, it had to go up a little bit because so it was 39.
so did you actually take the population?
So what we did is 2/3. And that's what we did.
Right, okay, so the reason I'm confused is when we were talking about it, we were talking about how many calls had gone out. We had done 2/3 of the calls.
So that's when you're talking about
Because we
splitting. That's when you're talking about splitting. So
Yeah, because we didn't go out and try to count the houses and see what the population is.
Right.
Yeah.
So we
So
did it by call volume.
so if we can just hang with that thought for 1 minute. So you calculated for the whole town.
Yep.
The price was
Okay.
$41,954, and that comes from a per capita cost of $38.14. And I'm assuming the number of people in which that comes out is what?
1,100.
1,100.
Yeah, that's the 2000 newest census.
Okay. So that was one of the first problems we had, because Orleans is a per capita cost, and their per capita cost is $33.69. But her price was 40 higher than yours, which makes no sense. So one of the
They were
things,
saying 1,600. But I listened to their.
People.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know where.
So I've gone back, like I'm doing that with you guys, talked with Marilyn and said, how do you have a higher number? What is the mathematics here? And she said, well, I used 1,300 people because that's on the website.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, so we're gonna fix the math. And so ironically, Deb told me 1,200. So you're in the middle of them somehow.
Well, I think that's what, that I knew the last time. This is all on this, so that's what we basically do.
1,200. So that's what we should use then for the cost of the town. I mean, it's got to be equal. If it's a per capita cost,
Yep.
you guys all have to add the same number
Yep.
of people. So whatever it is that we come up with, if you want to use 1,200, we can use 1,200, and you guys we can adjust you up essentially. So holding on to that thought for a minute. All right, so that kind of gets us through there. So
Can I just jump in for, I mean, we're okay with the $1,100 figure, 1,100 people figure.
1,100.
I mean, we're okay with that.
If we did our budget with 1,100, so.
Yeah.
Okay, then
In
what?
order to change stuff, we'd have to go back and redo another budget.
Okay, so we'll have Marilyn use the 1,100. And so her
Okay.
price
Yeah.
will be
Yeah.
based on the 1,100.
Who's Maryland?
Orleans ambulance. Okay, so that's that. So
One should make her cap go up and ours go down, or ours stay the same. Or maybe,
well, per capita is per capita, right?
well, yeah, but it's still gonna be the same dollar figure.
Right.
They gotta figure out what their budget costs them. I mean, that's how we,
Yeah, well, let her deal with her.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's 1,100 and the per capita for you guys is what you just told us, so we can figure that. So holding with that thought, if what she did was she just went 50% of that for 50% of the town. And you guys haven't done that. You've inflated that fairly significantly. And what I heard the other day was that you felt your expenses are higher. But because you had 2/3 call volume on that half of the town, isn't that how you generate revenue? Insurances, private pay, Medicaid, Medicare, all of those ways that you bill out. And I read that in this article too, the comments around what keeps our costs down is the number of calls we respond to. So generally speaking, that would make somebody assume if you have more calls on that side of town, you'll make more money than they will, because you'll be able to bill that out.
And we factored in.
So our expenses don't change. I mean, we've done a budget with our expenses for the year. So when we lose a third of the calls, I mean, so I broke down every single call that we had last year, and 2/3 of them were there. So we've lost a third of the income of what we, in our budget. So we had to figure out, we had to charge to everybody and report those guys.
You followed me with what I said though.
I do a little bit, but we also, our expenses are the same.
So if we
for the
were,
year.
so if we were a town of only 800 people, your per capita would still be $38.
If we had the same call volume. You know, our smaller towns, they per capita, I can tell you was $55.
But we're in with Newport and Derby.
Yeah.
And so what's the per cap there?
Say,
So it was 38.
That's my point.
what saves you money,
Is that we have,
big time, is that you have Newport.
I understand that.
So,
I understand that. Well, what could really save us money is $34, right? But without looking at that,
that money was not your issue when you talked to us.
it's not, it's all about response time. I just wanna. That doesn't feel right to me. So if you're,
But we're a paramedic service. I mean,
If
you know,
you're-
you're
but
not
if you're-
comparing apples to apples.
if you're $38 per cap. And it's a 50% split, it's $38 per cap.
But is it a 50% split? We asked you to split the town, or what the populations was. You couldn't, when on our meeting,
Yeah.
you told me you couldn't do that.
Well, we haven't been able to do that at this point. That's one of the points that I'm gonna discuss here, that I have discussed with Marilyn also. And said, for this year, what we would like to do is just do the 50-50 split. And because of the response time, because that is the driving factor for us. And between now and our next contract, we will go road to road, door to door, deal with Deb, however we gotta do it and figure that out. It might be a 60-40, it might be a 55-45, whatever it is, it is. And she said, fine, whatever it is, it is. This is our per cap, no matter how many people are there. This is the per cap that you're gonna get charged the same as all the other towns that they service. That's the number.
So. Yeah.
But I don't wanna talk about her as much as I wanna talk about you guys. Let her, let her do her.
But the reason we did 2/3, because you told us you couldn't come up with a population. So we went back and did the call. We said, well, so if we're going to 2/3 the calls, we ought to build 2/3. That's how it came.
That's fine. I'm not here to argue that
No.
I just wanna understand how you get the number.
Yeah,
And
that's how we got.
we gotta flush it out on whether we wanna pay that.
Yeah.
The next one was dispatching. Heard the other day that you're gonna bill us separate for that.
Yes, so we bill per call. That's how we get billed every time you get dispatched, to a call in Coventry, Newport PD bills, Newport ambulance.
Okay.
And they would build more lanes.
Yeah, so what they do is they take a running 4-year average. So they took last year's average and they billed us. So next year, they'll give me a call volume of, hey, you did 60 calls in Coventry, and Orleans did 40. So Orleans will pay for 40 of those. But as of right now, Orleans isn't gonna get charged for any of the dispatching because they go off from the 2023 and 4-year back average.
So the price that we're getting from Orleans is inclusive of dispatch.
Right, because they haven't been charged.
They haven't been charged.
That's
They
not
won't be
true, but
charged.
again, that's their issue, not.
Yeah,
our
but they
issue.
won't be charged. We're gonna be charged for that anyways.
Okay, so
So,
going with you is just, I gotta figure out the costs associated and the reasons why. And the number that we got over there is inclusive of dispatch. So it's a $34 per cap, no matter how many there is, and dispatch is included. It's just the way it is. The other one was they had 1,900 calls last year. And you had said that's not true. There was a large bulk of those that were transports. And I asked that question. And they have those numbers, and it was plus or minus 1,700 for 911 calls.
1,700 for 911 calls.
That's what the number they gave us.
Okay.
So that's the answer to that. So for me, it seems like you guys are a long ways apart. It just seems to me that's too far. I'm not speaking for Dan, I'm not speaking for Scott, I'm speaking for me, that's just too far apart. And I don't think that I'm gonna be willing to probably go for that. I believe the town would be served best split. That's my belief. Response time, quality care units on both ends of the town. Been through it all, heard both sides of everything. And so that's where I'm at, as long, and I would be willing to pay the 38 for half the town, not 2/3 of it. And, you know, the dispatching thing, I don't know, let these guys talk here in a minute on what they think, but I mean, the dispatching too is, I don't know, we could pay half of it, of your ask, or something like that, however that would work out, but I don't see myself voting for, where were we at there? $38.14, which was for the total, and then it's significantly higher than that for 50%. So we're way up over 40 plus dispatch. When we're getting the same, we're getting it for $33.69. That's way up. That doesn't make sense to me. So, I mean, if you guys are willing to bring those prices down to what we can make an agreement with and try it for a year, that's what I think we should do. I don't think we as a group should just walk away from Newport and go get Orleans to run the whole town. But I can't pay over 40 plus dispatch. That just doesn't make sense.
So what do you consider your half the town population?
We were 50-50. That's what we were.
Yeah, this is a figure 1,300 because we're at 11. We were low on the population.
Well,
See what I'm getting at?
you said 1,100 a few minutes ago, and then you said leave it at 1,100.
Well, when we're talking, doing the full town, but I mean, if the numbers are, so you're asking us to give up, to more of the calls, pay for the dispatch.
But more
I mean, that
calls
Orleans
increase
doesn't-
revenue.
Orleans is not gonna be billed with dispatch till next year. So I can understand why they can throw that in. But we're still gonna get billed for it, right? So no matter what, I mean, that's the way I understand it, unless Travis can do it some other way, we're gonna pay for the full dispatch, even for the ones Orleans. For this year, because it's based on the past, not on the current year. So this year, that figure is 44.50.
And we might be able to work something out.
Unless we can
PD.
bill, if we can bill Orleans,
No, we might be able to work something out with PD where.
but they're throwing it in, Orleans is throwing it in. We could bill Orleans, but they're 50% of the dispatch.
You talk to Marilyn on all you want on
So you
secondary
understand what
sales.
I'm saying, because we've got that is our cost, and it's cost for coverage. All of the coverage, we're paying.
And that's something we can work out with dispatch. I think that we could probably work something out with dispatch where they split it half and half, and Orleans
Yeah,
gets
but
a
for
bill.
this year, we're already gonna get that.
No, but it's for 2024. So we could probably work something out with
We'd have
dispatch. The dispatch is,
Cause I don't wanna eat $4,000. I don't wanna eat Orleans dispatch. That's what I'm getting at.
Orleans dispatch now, what is it through? It's not through the same dispatch.
It is.
Previous.
It's through
but
Newport.
they do it by a call volume. So they get billed for XYZ calls and then they break it down. So ours is $114,000. And so PD will send us a breakdown. So Coventry, I had it here, was a running average of 100 calls a year. Newport City was like 1,600, you know, and so we take that 114 and we break it down by all the total calls. And then that's how, so it was like $44 and some odd cents per call. And so next year, if the calls went up in Coventry to 200, the running average might go up to 112. So the dispatch would go up. Or if the running average went down to 70, the 4-year average would go down a little bit. So that's how PD does their dispatch, I just explained it to you. And so they do 4 years. Because they can't do a projected, they always go off the previous 4 years. So they're doing not even 2023, they do like 2022, 21, 20, and 19. And then so next year will be 2023, you know, and it will kick off 1 year. That's how
Okay.
dispatch is done. I didn't come up with that, before PD did.
Yeah, I don't know how it works either. I know that Orleans uses that dispatch service, so
Yeah,
they
they
must be paying them just like you're paying.
They do, so what I'm saying is.
But I don't believe they're then charging those other towns a dispatch fee.
Well, they have to put it in their budget somehow. I
It's
don't know.
it's in that $34. That's
Yeah,
my
I
point.
don't.
Yeah, that's my
do
point.
anything
It's
there.
in that $34. It's not the 34 and then the dispatch fee. So.
It will be when they get billed.
So have you guys?
I mean,
ever-
for the other towns that they service,
So have you guys?
the other towns they're currently servicing with Newport Dispatch. I don't believe, and we can ask her, but I don't believe that they then send those towns another bill for dispatch. I believe it's inclusive in that number, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they charge us for.
Yeah, that's the thing, some of these. Have you guys considered, going back for 1 year, going back to the old map? You know, where Webster Road, Coventry Station Road, and, you know, and just doing a little bit, you know, hey, taking a little bit off our appropriations, giving a little bit to Orleans for the first year, and then let's go do some research and, you know, final population stuff. So, I mean, it doesn't affect our budget so much, doesn't affect, I mean, we're at budget time. I mean, this really crunches us hard, as a service. I mean, it was bad timing, but, you know, I know Webster Road was a big concern,
Yeah.
Valley Road, River Road, those all used to be. I mean, I can give you backstory to, I think Scott and I talked, you know, when he first came in. Orleans used to cover all the way up to that. Again, you guys are, it's closer. Orleans never charged, which Marilyn said. They were a volunteer service. When they went full-time, they started having to charge. So back then, it was a town meeting, that was before my time, that was the old director. He says, hey, we've always charged for the full town. This is what our cost was. So at that time, the board went, well, if we're paying that anyway, we're not paying Orleans, you guys take the whole thing over. There was no compromise between anybody. I understand but I do disagree, you know, like the village here. I mean, it's really close difference, you know, and, but it would be really nice. And I think it would be beneficial for Orleans to cover that portion. But for us to continue the village and everything like that for 1 year, and you know what, we can sit and meet multiple times and map stuff out. I think we're jumping the gun. We did this really quick, you know, like, we didn't have maps. I mean, I sat here and listened to Phil Marquette the other day, and his mileage was a little different than what Scott had, but, you know, we're going off of EJ's maps. I've never done any time, you know.
None of those mileages changed the station that was closer.
Yeah.
Right?
So I haven't done
None of that
Phil
did.
had different ones from what you did, so I just,
The numbers that were different didn't change who was closer.
okay,
The numbers that Phil had versus what EJ had were a mile or two off here or there, but none of them changed the fact that you were closer in some regard
Yeah.
areas and
and that's, and I'm not
Orleans,
arguing that.
so none of that
You know,
was.
1 mile difference, is the board willing to choose a non-paramedic full-time? We have 70, you know, the equipment we have. I'm not dishing Orleans, we work so good with Orleans. We do their billing. When I need something, I call EJ, same thing. EJ calls me when he's, you know, the other day he was out, hey Jeff, can you put, you know, we move trucks to the interstate. We are probably the best working group together, and that's why I don't want to cause issues between us and Orleans. But I would think the town should take a little more time into this. And yes, you know, the old maps, you know, to Coventry Station Road, River Road, all that stuff. And maybe we come up with a quick, you know, number to give Orleans, and you take it off our appropriations or something, you know.
Yeah.
And then we take a year to look at this, so we know going into next year that, hey, you know, I don't mind coming in and sitting with Scott and mapping it out and really, all right, you know what? From the school up is way close, you know, or hey, the school is way closer to Orleans, you know, but when you're looking at that half mile, that's minutes when you have a paramedic service.
Yeah.
But
What really
that's sure.
was drawing my attention is, and maybe we talked about it, maybe it was just a mistake of going to Orleans and then I just,
So I went back and looked at that, and what they did is, because they hit the CAD, they went River Road,
yeah.
so they went River Road up.
And again, that was just a mistake, like Scott was saying, that's
And
just,
it's-
you know, we all make mistakes.
It's phone mapped it.
Yeah,
And, I do understand,
but I didn't know that, I thought an ambulance was an ambulance. I didn't know that Orleans didn't have a paramedic and Orleans did.
so I'll tell you right now, today, I have a flight paramedic and a flight nurse that are both working, a critical care paramedic, they both work for Dart. But they work pickup shifts for me once in a while, so he's there today. So I tell you, the crew that I have on today would be like, it's a helicopter crew. I'm paying huge money for these guys, they pick up per diem shifts for me, I mean, every once in a blue moon. But we have that capability once in a while. I have 3 paramedics on today. Just that doesn't happen very often, but I do.
So you don't have a paramedic on every ambulance, right?
I have 1 paramedic on shift,
Right.
so not on every
Right.
ambulance.
And so what happens when you have an ambulance go out without the paramedic, but they find out that they need one? What happens?
So we're instantly headed, the same thing as if it was an intercept. But what we try to do is we try to listen to the dispatch, you know, so if the call goes out as a seizure, our paramedic crew's going. If our call goes out as a lift assist or a medical alarm, we'll send the AMT or BLS crew, because we don't want to send our paramedic out to a lift assist and then need them somewhere else.
Right.
So we try to judge off dispatch on what crew goes.
So that's sort of what Orleans does. And you do, they have a contract with you for the
So they
paramedic.
do not, I mean, they have
They have a contract with you for the paramedic.
So
Right.
here's the thing, they have a contract with what we will charge them. So they have to choose if they're going to call or not call.
I
The
understand.
difference with us is I hit my crews, we have a paramedic on, they cannot not call that paramedic. If it meets protocol to call that paramedic, they have to call that paramedic because it doesn't cost us anything.
So the process for Orleans, who finds themselves in the need of the paramedic, they don't stop what they're doing and wait for you to show up in Orleans or Barton Village. They get in transport, they get in transit, and you do an interstate.
Yep.
That's no different than you would be doing with your own ambulances.
Correct.
So I hear you, but for clarity's sake and for everybody in the public to know and understand, it's not quite fair to characterize it like that, because you yourself sort of do that system too, which is in transit, you meet, you know what's going on, and it doesn't stop that ambulance that you have out there already from performing what they need to perform and be headed for the hospital. So I get it. I understand it a lot better than I did a week ago.
Mr. Chair, can we hear the different level, I guess, skill set, for lack of a better word, between the EMT, EMTI, when in an ambulance, Newport, how do they know what a paramedic is needing? What does the paramedic do that an EMT can't? Is it the equipment? Is it the drugs?
Have at it, yes.
It's all of the above. So an EMT has a certain scope, which is basic life support. An AMT has a minimum amount of meds, can do some advanced airway, some IV treatment. Then a paramedic has a lot more meds, can do advanced airways, can do trauma decompression, whole cardioversions. So a paramedic is a higher scope.
Mr. Chair, what about the equipment between the two units, between the two services? Does Orleans have the same equipment on board that Newport does?
Can you answer that one, Joe?
So Orleans has, up to AEMT equipment. So they're at the AEMT level, so they have AEMT equipment. Newport, we have paramedic equipment, so we'll have, a few more, IV pumps, some high flow nasal cannula equipment, ventilators. But that's only because we're a paramedic service. But Orleans does, they have to meet the minimum AEMT, and they do.
So advanced, more advanced equipment.
The paramedic services, our trucks have a more advanced equipment, but they can only be used by the paramedics. So there is a minimum by the state standard, and Orleans meets that every year because they're inspected every year. So again, I don't want to say anything bad about Orleans because we work really, really well with them.
How many ambulances Orleans have?
4, I believe.
Is it 4?
I believe so.
And you guys have 5?
10.
10? Out of Newport.
So we have 6 housed in Newport.
Gotcha.
Brian, are you still there? You sleeping?
Get his phone in.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. I'm taking it all in.
Well, you've been awful
Can
quiet.
you hear me?
Yep. How about
You
it?
know, I think, well, if I'm gonna voice in at all, I think, you know, it is all about response time. I think the service between both, ambulances, what they can provide, you know, with the EMTs available, and the paramedics available, I think it's all about, you know, just the response time. And I think, you know, it would be really nice, but it's impossible at this point in time for us to get, you know, exact population count. You know, I think a 50-50 split may be a little, we don't exactly know the numbers of people on the sides of the new maps that we were proposed, but I think Deb probably knows pretty accurately around 1,200 people. I'm thinking, and didn't we say that Orleans was using 1,300 people? Is that correct?
Her initial calculations were based on 1,300, yeah. So we'll adjust we would adjust Newport up to the 1,200 and Orleans down to the 1,200.
But I think we should use the 1,200 number. I think it would be fair for the town of Coventry to pay the $38.14 on the 600 people to the town of Newport, and I think we should pay the $2,200 this year towards the dispatch. And I think that's where I would like to be. That's just my opinion. And after hearing you, I think that's close to what you're thinking. But let's hear what Dan's thinking, and let's you know, maybe move to make a vote on this, and you know, move to also to do an accurate head count of people to make it 100% accurate going forward for the following years to come.
I'm kind of torn with it, so I guess that leaves me with the 50-50 split.
Go ahead.
I'm a Coventry resident.
Yep.
I want to know where the 50-50 split is.
It was Station Road. We, so this from like Martha's out to Brownington, the Station Road, what is closer to the Orleans Bay. And one other little road up there off Brownington, I can't remember the name of it.
Regal Road.
Regal Road up there, and I think from the end of the Station Road this way, the village and these streets and roads out here are closer to Orleans.
I would tend to disagree with that, but I live in this area. And if I have a choice as a Coventry resident, okay, and we're getting into a serious illness, I would prefer a medic service, paramedic service available to me.
It would be.
But no, you say it's not. You're gonna make a split, and you're telling me because I live on this side of town, this side of Martha's, that I have to, you're gonna have to send Orleans to me. And the only way that there's a paramedic is if they decide, or someone is listening, that it's a serious enough thing that they should be getting a paramedic. And I disagree with that. I'm within a 10th of a mile. And you're gonna tell me I'm one of the 600 that has to go to Orleans instead of going to Newport? Where are you getting your numbers, and where is your cutoff, and how are you making that decision?
Mileage to the bay. Response time.
So what's the mileage from Covered Bridge Road to the Bay of Orleans?
I don't know. I can't
Well,
remember.
but you're saying that's your cutoff because it's mileage from the bay to that area.
Right.
Um,
I mean, that's the answer. I'm not lying to you.
well,
That's
no,
the-
I
that's the-
understand that you're
That's the
not-
mileage that these guys looked at, the mileage that EJ did, that our 911 coordinator gave us. We didn't make this up. It's the response time from the ambulance bays to parts of our town for response time.
Then
That's how we did it.
then you're altering E911 protocol.
The maps will be adjusted.
Then as I said, you're altering E911 protocol because right now.
Jeff can answer that better than I
If I
can.
call E911 right now, they're gonna send Newport.
Correct.
Yes, the town of Coventry is, Bill Marquette and the
Yeah.
select board will have to, redraw the lines.
Right.
They'll have to take the E911. I don't know if they go by roads or squares. I know when we did Derby, it was squares.
It's roads now. The state has adjusted that for fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When does this need to be decided?
Tonight, right now.
And this is for 24, 25.
January 1.
Just 24.
So Jeremy, gotcha.
Well,
So you guys willing to do the 3814 for 600 people?
here's, I'd like to go down here. When we went to the 2/3. Figure we gave you a 2/3. Was at $39.98 per cat. And the reason for that is because we had less income coming in. It raised everybody's, it raised Newport's, it raised. So if I showed you what we had to do for budgets every time we make a change, you would see, but it affects 4 towns. So when we took out what we thought we would be losing 1/3 plus the run income. It wasn't just the per cap, it was. We figured what, $7,000 or $8,000 for run income.
Yeah, so the runs
Plus
per cap.
the per cap. And that's how so our income and expense would balance out that way. So when we do that, the cap number didn't really change. But the per cap for everybody did. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but our per cap goes up because our income is. So, and our budget remains the same, because we still have to have the same amount of paramedics, same amount of vehicles. Our light bill and heat bill, you know what I'm saying, our insurance, nothing changes expense wise. It was only income that's changing for us when this happens. So when we took that income out, the per cap went up for everybody, not just Coventry. Went up to Newport City, went up to Newport Town. So we've given them kind of preliminary figures for that, but their per cap is $39.98 at that point. City of Newport, Newport Town, and Derby. their cap went up because of that change. So I would,
So, Charlie, if
Right.
I'm hearing you correctly, basically, if we have a population of 600, every dollar it goes up, every dollar you're per person costs us $600. So if it goes from 38 to 39, it's 600 more for the town. Goes to 40, it's 1,200 more for the town. So that's correct.
So I,
yes,
yeah, I come up with a number of
So
20.
it's not huge.
no, it's not a lot of money. But let me just finish my thought process. I really don't want to have to go back to 3 more budgets. So.
And go back to 3 more towns.
And go back to 3 more towns and say, okay, we have another new figure for you.
Yeah.
I told you before, the timing was terrible, so we would do 600 people at $39.98 plus half the dispatch.
That comes out to $23.98.
So that's, yeah, you're right, Scott, that's not a lot of money difference, but it's enough that whatever we do, instead of going back to the budgets, we're just gonna eat it and hope we can make it up in expenses somewhere else. Because our budgets are done, so. But that way you'd be paying the same per cap that Newport City, Derby, and Newport Town is. I hate to go back to them and say, look, your price has gone up, and Coventry's stayed the same. That just doesn't seem fair to me to that. And we're still gonna be $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 less. And try it for a year,
Right,
see how it works out.
and potentially that 600 can increase potentially. Based on.
Right.
the-
Yeah, I mean,
the
I don't
census.
I'll be more than happy to come sit with you guys and, we can.
Right.
Go break down every,
Right.
Now we don't have to rush, I don't, not that we're rushing, but
Right.
it's sort of. We all feel rushed, I think.
Yeah, and it's just. So if
And
we
maybe it goes
did,
the
if
other
we
way.
did that, I could, at least everybody's paying the same per cap.
Yep.
But I don't feel right saying, you guys have gone up, because Coventry has made a change, but their per cap is going to be less than yours as a result of the fuel rates. It's not a lot of money, but it's just, the principle is.
I can swallow that, Scott, can you?
Yeah, unity.
Yeah, that sounds good for me.
So they would request us at the 39.98. Did I say that right?
For 600.
For the 600
Plus half the.
and half the dispatch.
Yeah.
For a year,
That works.
For-
Next year, we'll,
for a year, and we'll work together. Whenever is good for you guys to, Deb will help us, somebody will help us here and we'll
Yeah,
figure out.
I work it out before November.
Yeah, way
I
before.
mean,
we
way
can see
before.
how it works, if something's not working, we can revisit it, maybe we revisit in June instead of.
Yep.
Budget time.
Yep.
Scott, is there a reason this can't be, whatever you decide tonight, is there a reason this can't be put to the voters on town meeting day?
It's contract service, it's a select board's job.
I got one more, I should have done more research on the paramedic part of it. If Orleans comes with no paramedic, or you come with no paramedic, and they need a paramedic, is it just calling in a paramedic and these guys, and they're not gonna sit around twiddling their thumbs, but that's basically what's
Yeah, so
going on.
I mean, so we have 6 people at our station. There's always a paramedic on every single day. If Orleans needs it, they will jump in the ambulance and go meet them. If my crew needs them, they'll go in there. Doesn't, Scott's been 100% right. Doesn't mean there's always gonna be a paramedic on it. If someone's seizing in Derby and the paramedic's there, then all of a sudden Orleans needs one because they're seizing. They could wait for one to come back, Bill from Glover or something, but they're not going to. The ambulances are, you have basic life support, you've got to breathe for them, and that's, you know, the old saying of diesel, you know, they just rush to the hospital and try to get them there faster, you know, it's, but they're, you know, we're trying to advance, you know, we're trying to put more paramedics through. Orleans was an EMT service, they've moved up to an AEMT service, you know. Healthcare is progressing all the time. Unfortunately, healthcare is progressing and our reimbursements are going down. And that's, you know, as select board members, please reach out to your legislators and keep, you know, they cut, you know, they're trying to pass a bill called no surprise billing right now so that they get commercial billers to pay us Medicaid wages. You know, medical supplies go up, but we don't see an increase in Medicare. You know, so sometimes having that advanced care, it costs the ambulance a little more money. You know, when I put more meds into people and more IVs, more to next thing you know, my cost of that patient might, you know, might have progressed past what Medicaid pays us. So sometimes we lose money by being a paramedic service.
Let me just add something, and that situation is already in flux with us, because our goal is to be a total paramedic service. So, we just acquired a grant, put 6 more, so we have 6 more people going into the paramedics, 2 years. So,
I
in
just
2 years' time,
$40,000.
2 years' time, instead of having 6 paramedics, we're gonna have 12. So yeah, pretty much every shift will have.
Awesome.
And the other addition to that is Jeff is a paramedic who is not regularly scheduled. I mean, Jeff, we could have 2 paramedics because Jeff is there. How many times do you run? Lots.
Yeah, I take the
So
fly
he-
car home. and try to
So if
respond.
Orleans calls out and our paramedic that's on shift is gone and Jeff is there, then Jeff's there.
Got it.
And he has his own fast car. So,
And if someone shows up and they're not a paramedic, but they need a paramedic, they can be on their way to the hospital,
in
is that?
most cases,
Yeah. I mean, and
so you meet them on route.
And, you know, sometimes you get the bad car accidents or whatever, and they call, you know, we meet them on scene.
Yeah.
You know, if Scott's having a heart attack and whatever, they need a paramedic, they're not gonna wait for us.
Which is likely.
They get.
Yeah.
Quite likely, I think, soon.
Yeah, I mean, but, yeah, I guess it depends, yeah, they probably.
All right, well, thank you.
And whatever,
Thank
you
you.
know, I just want you guys to know, we're not talking bad about Orleans.
It-
Orleans.
Oh,
I get it.
We work, EJ and I work, I mean, he's #1 in my phone. Anytime I can't do a transfer, I pass it to Orleans. We do all Orleans' billing. So we have a very good working we probably have the best working relationship of most ambulance services in the state. right now,
They were as clear as you are now, saying the same thing. And one of the things I've learned through this process is how lucky we are. We got both of you guys. It's about the response for us, and I think you get it. So let's work through this. Let's make it work. Love you guys' service. You're A1. We want to keep it. So I'm gonna make a motion if people are ready.
Yes, we're ready.
I would make a motion that the Coventry contract with Newport Ambulance for the $39.98 for 600 people, and half the dispatch fee, for the calendar year 2024.
Second,
All those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
so
Very good.
why don't we deal with the other motion on Orleans right now? You want to do it that way?
Yes, please.
I would make a motion that Town of Coventry also contract with Orleans service for the 3369 for 600 people, which comes out, I believe, to 20,214 inclusive of dispatch. And Matt, you'll need to coordinate that with Maryland.
Not a problem.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Chair, just before you adjourn, just for housekeeping. I mean, obviously Coventry has several major roads going through it. So if there's a 1050 and it run accident. People, none of the people live here, how are those patients billed? Are they billed through their insurance company? How does that work?
We bill everything through insurance companies. That's, the town doesn't, the town contracts us. Part of the service is 911 coverage. The other part of the service is we transport any of the town residents out of North Country Hospital to larger hospitals if needed. And if there's, they're not insured, we eat that. So we don't bother with insurance from, or we bother with insurance. We don't bill the town for if they're not insured.
We don't get any other bills.
So
Did I answer that correctly?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
What about on average, 30% of our calls are
Non-billable.
non.
Yeah. we're running-
Non-billable.
Yeah, so we're running about a 70% average right now for all of our
So we
stations.
eat 30%.
So whether,
That's all factors.
someone pulls a medical alarm and we go there, we don't bill them. But we still have the cost of fuel and
Right.
the wear on the ambulance, if car accidents, the fender benders that people walk away from,
And that's basically part of the reason why we started billing the town. In fact, I mean, since Jeff's been around, we've always been billing the towns, but when I started, it was bill. And that was pretty much the same district wide, that's all. Comes all. So you end up picking up, you don't ask people, so you end up picking up an awful lot of people. They don't have Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, or, a pot to piss in, so.
You don't find out till later.
You don't find out the bigger, you just eat it. And historically, about 30% of our stuff is just getting.
So what does this cover? Who do you bill for, the insurance company or the town? How does?
The town doesn't, this contract is just for ambulance coverage. It's just like any other town. We take our losses, figure it out, what we need, because we're a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And then the towns split that up.
So it's to cover expenses?
Yes.
Yeah.
Over and above what we bring in.
Right.
A lot of that is what the towns are paying. If we factored it all in, it's probably about 30% of our budget. It's probably about the amount of what we're not getting paid for.
I mean, this is something that,
And if we go to Medicaid for all, so if the towns ever hear that statement, run as fast as you
Say
can.
no.
We're gonna be coming to you for lots more money, because
so
they pay only a third.
if you look at
We had that
legislative,
discussion in.
they've been, there's all sorts that goes through legislative, but EMS has been fighting for cost of readiness, correct reimbursements. If Medicare, Medicaid paid, reimbursed what they needed to reimburse, we wouldn't have to go to the towns
Right.
for the money. But when Medicaid pays us $280 for a call, okay, I do 2 calls a day. Just say it's a slow day, I do 2 calls, but I've got 4 people sitting there. The cost of readiness just for those guys is over that. Then I've got light bills, workman's comp, everything else. So they're figuring it out that the cost of readiness is way more than what we're getting for reimbursement rates. And that's Orleans, that's every ambulance. So where Newport's no different than Orleans on that.
Okay, we got any other business? Good. Adjourn us.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you,
All
guys.
there.
Just let me know next year, when we wanna just sit down and maybe you and me, EJ or whatever, we can just sit down and we can go for rides, we can figure out what's where.